All right. Well, those of you that are listening, you may remember Maven from episode 12 of the Disney Hack, where we talked about early morning ADRs. Well, today we are talking about some early morning wake up tips and strategies to use, especially the extra magic hours, especially the early ones, early extra magic hours that you can use on your trips. Boy, I'm gonna say that over again.
That's a tough one.
Welcome to the Disney Hack Podcast, where we talk about your best tricks and tips for your Disney trips. Today, I'm joined by Maven, the founder and chief travel blogger of goinformed.net, a blog that brings you the insights to inspire and inform your next adventure. Welcome back to the Disney Hack, Maven.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Hey, you're a travel hack master. I've learned a lot from you. I understand you took a recent trip. Where did you go?
Oh, my most recent Disney trip was to Disneyland, and that was just magical. It was really, really fun because my daughter and I usually travel to Orlando, and going to Disneyland, it was neat to see the differences between the original there and our favorite in Orlando. Yeah, we had a great time.
Was this your first time going to Disneyland?
No, not at all. We live on the West Coast, so Disneyland used to be our place to go, but many years ago we discovered the magic of Disney World and some of the other parks in Orlando that you might be able to read about on my blog, but we won't talk about here.
Dark place we don't go to, yeah.
Yes, exactly. But I hadn't been to Disneyland in a while, and it was really fun because now that we're kind of Disney World geeks, it was neat to see the difference in, for example, the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Wow, it's so cool at Disneyland. And any of you guys that are going to Disneyland, you have to go to the Blue Bayou and eat lunch, eat dinner, whatever. It's the coolest restaurant. It's inside the Pirates ride. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite places. I love the Monte Cristo there, and I always try to make arrangements to dine there. Last time I dined at the Blue Bayou actually was a Valentine's dinner with my wife and I, just the two of us, and it was great to sit at a two-top right next to the water and watch the boats go by, and it was just such a great experience. I recommend it for anybody and everybody that has a chance to go to Disneyland. Definitely eat at the Blue Bayou.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Awesome. Did you get to do the new Guardians of the Galaxy ride?
No, we were there before that opened, and now I guess I have to go back.
Oh, darn. You're just going to have to plan another trip to Disneyland.
I know. I think I already am, actually. In my head, it's happening.
That's awesome. For those of you that are listening, you may remember Maven from episode 12 of the Disney Hack, where we talked about early morning ADRs. Well, today we're talking about some early morning wake-up tips and strategies to use extra magic hours, especially those early extra magic hours. Now, I understand this is your number one tip. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, getting up early is it's the most magical time at the theme parks, I think. And there's a lot of reasons to be there. Well, first of all, you're going to be there first. So that is the number one reason. That's my number one tip, is you get to be first at the park, which means no one else is in the park. I mean, you could go to sections of Magic Kingdom where you are the only ones walking around. It is just awesome. So you're dealing with, basically no or very low crowds. Pictures, you can get the most awesome pictures if you're first in the park. You get a picture of yourself in front of the castle with nobody else in the background, which is super rare thing to have happen. You can get on any ride without a fast pass, without much line. And the atmosphere is different too in the morning. I just like the way the parks smell first thing in the morning. I don't know what it is, but there's something special. They definitely do have a
magic smell. That's right. You had mentioned photography and taking pictures with it. In the morning, you've got that magic hour where the sun is real low in the horizon, and you see these pictures on Instagram and Facebook where there's nobody on Main Street, and you could see all the way down to the castle. And for anybody that's ever wanted to take those kinds of pictures, even if you're an amateur, all you got to do is get up a little extra early. And if you're staying on property, you can take advantage of those extra magic hours, be the first person in there, race for Main Street, and get your camera ready and or your phone ready and take those pictures, and you can get pictures just like the pros do.
Yeah. I mean, it is awesome. You know, one of my favorite places in the morning, and I think we were just talking about this, Animal Kingdom, when the sun, you can be there when the sun is going up. We've ridden Expedition Everest when the sun is rising, and it is amazing. It's otherworldly, really,
Oh yeah.
especially if you're traveling in the winter time and you're coming from someplace that's kind of dark. It's so wonderful to be there for that warm sunrise down there in Florida. And in the summertime, it's a lot cooler in the parks first thing in the morning. So the sunrise is a lot more comfortable time of day usually than sunset. That's another reason to get up for it.
Absolutely. Oh, and waking up and early when it's dark and seeing the sunrise when you're at a magical place like Animal Kingdom where the mist hangs over the water. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but yeah, I've had that experience, and it really is part of that magical component that you just can't bottle and you can't buy. You just got to be able to get up early and get there for it. It's really something special that everybody should check out. So we're talking about getting up early to go to the parks. What time do we mean by early, and how do you figure out what time to get up?
Oh, that's a really good question, and not everybody listening is going to like the answer. If you're taking advantage of those early extra magic hours, usually what happens at Disney World is at least one park, usually it's just one park out of the four, will have an early extra magic hour time. And typically that's 1 hour before the park opens to the public. And typically that means, well, usually park opening on a regular day is 9 o'clock at most of the parks. So usually extra magic hour opening would be 8 o'clock. We actually have had an experience when we went over President's Day weekend, which is a super busy time of year. And that weekend, the extra magic hour started at 7 in the morning. So be prepared that we're talking about early. Now, here's the thing, because it's so early, most people will not get up for that. You know, it
That's a
just,
good thing, actually. That's good for all of us that do want to
yeah,
get up that early.
that's right. It really gives you a reason, an advantage to getting up early. Um, and if you can get yourself out of bed, you'll be amazed how little crowd there is for even for an 8 o'clock, but especially a 7 o'clock extra magic hour.
So walk me through this. How early do I need to get up and get my family up, to get out of the hotel, to get to the bus, to get to the park, to be there for early magic hours?
One of the things that people are going to realize from listening to us about this topic is that a lot of this thing that you're doing that morning requires planning and some action that you do before the morning that you're talking about. And this is the first example of that, which is know what the park schedule is. And you also need to know a few other things. You need to know, okay, what time does the park open? What time do you need to be there? And then what time do you need to get up? You need to back it up from that park opening time. So if the extra magic hour is at 8 o'clock, first of all, that doesn't mean that you should arrive at the park at 8 o'clock. The parks usually will let people in through the gates and drop the rope. The rope drop will happen about 15 minutes before the actual time that they give you. So an 8 o'clock extra magic hour probably means you can actually get out into the park at 7:45. So you're going to want to allow for time to just working backwards, allow time to walk from the bus to the turnstile. I say get to the park a good 30 minutes before whatever the extra magic hour time is. So if you've got an 8 o'clock opening time, get there at 7:30, which means if you're staying on site, leave your hotel room another half, or get on the bus about a half hour before that. So you got an 8 o'clock extra magic hour. You'd really want to aim to be at the bus stop by 7. If you can be there a little before, that's even better, because the buses at that time in the morning don't run very frequently. And if you miss one, you might have to wait 30 minutes for the next bus. And that's time that you could have been in bed.
Right. You're leaving at 7 on the bus, which means you got to leave your hotel room, what, 6:40, 6:45?
Yeah, I mean, again, look at these things ahead of time. So when you get to if let's just say this is your first morning at Disney World and you just got to your hotel the day before, when you're there the night before, that afternoon or whatever, figure out where the bus stop is and figure out how much time it's going to take you to get there. Be realistic. If you've got people in your group that are not going to be moving very fast at 6:30 in the morning, then just allow some time for that. So for my daughter and I, we're pretty quick once we get out the door, and we try to request a room that's close to a bus stop. So we'll usually try to get out by, like, in this example, like 6:45. We're at the bus stop at just a little before 7. So then let's just say leaving the room at 6:45, figure out how much time you're going to need to get ready. And we're going to talk a little bit about ways to compress that time down and be really efficient in the morning, but be realistic about how much time it's going to take to get up. And you may need to get up, you may need to set your alarm for 6 o'clock that morning. That's probably, for most people, that's probably realistic.
If you have little kids or grandma and grandpa are visiting with you, or your husband or wife are not quite morning people, and you got to get them motivated and get some coffee in them, there could be an hour before you go to the parks. It could be 20 minutes, depending on, how your family operates. I know that I myself can get up, get, shorts, a clean shirt, a hat, shoes and socks, and sunscreen on, and I'm out the door, and it might, brush my teeth and all that, might take me 15 minutes, whereas other members of my family, it might take them 45. And so,
yeah. I know. And, even for people who just kind of get up and go like that, even for you, you're waking up in a strange place. Like, if you're gonna, you might not even know how to work the shower or whatever. So I'll just especially for that first morning, I just suggest, as much as you can stand it, just get up a couple minutes earlier, so that you're not just completely crazy, getting out. So you can rest later, take a nap in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's a great tip. All right, so you mentioned doing some stuff the night before to make your morning a little easier. Let's dive into that and see what tips you've got for us.
Well, the first one is, don't stay up until the middle of the night. So, I mean, some people can do that. And you're going to be tempted to do that on your first night, probably. But if we're talking about several mornings in a row and for us, it's every morning that we get up early, you really have to discipline yourself and resist the temptation to stay out late. I would also suggest, resist the temptation of staying out late at the Polynesian drinking tiki drinks. I mean, again, some people can do that. I'm not 21 years old anymore, so I cannot. So think about the next day when you're planning out the night before. Okay, some things that you can do to make the morning easier. Well, one thing is take your showers in the evening. Don't leave that for the morning. It is a lot faster to be able to get up like you just described, where you just get up and get dressed and brush your teeth and get out. So if you can make that work for you or your family, or at least some of your family members, you don't want to have, otherwise you're going to have to get up really early if you got one shower and you've got 4 people in your room. I like to think about getting up in the morning at Disney as being a lot like being a firefighter, and just the alarm goes off and you just jump out of bed and put on your stuff and head out the door.
Have your tennis shoes with your socks on top of them, with your shorts on top of them, with your shirt on top of that, with your ball cap and your glasses and your sunscreen on, right? Just have it all layered, just like a fireman. Anybody that's been to a firehouse has seen the boots and the fire clothes, the fireman's outer clothes that he pulls up over, or she pulls up over and puts on, zips up, throws their fireman's hat on, and out the door, on the fire truck they go, right? So kind of that kind of strategy. I like that.
Yeah, and for me, it actually gives me a lot of peace of mind just knowing I don't have to figure out what I'm going to wear in the morning. Like I've already got it sorted out. And I mean, I'm literal about that too. It's pretty much what you describe is like have everybody in the family make a spot in the room on the table or on the floor or whatever, and just have them put everything they're going to put on in the morning, just pile it up, and then make sure that somewhere in the room, everyone has put their magic band, their hat, whatever they're going to carry into the park, their purse, their backpack, the sunscreen, have that already organized and in a spot before you go to bed. Because in the morning, you're going to be bleary eyed and, you know, and you're going to be excited to get out of the room too. So do yourself a favor. I know you're tired at the end of the day, but the more of that you can have organized before you go to sleep, it's just going to make it so much easier in the morning.
I was just reminded of something while you were talking about that, and that is, when you are blurry-eyed in the morning, the very first thing I think of when my eyes open up in the morning is, why don't I have coffee in my hand? And if you have a room that has a timer on the coffee maker, that might be a great way to also, for me, if I could smell the coffee, that's going to help me get that much closer to dragging my body out of the bed and getting myself dressed, especially if I'm on day 4 or 5 and we've been going hard and I'm pretty exhausted. I just want to crawl back under the covers and go back to sleep. But if I can get that coffee in my hand, that would make a big difference. What about using some of the features they have at the resorts, like scheduling a wake-up call?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The wake up calls are one of my favorite things about staying on property at Disney, where you're going to be getting up early. Make sure you check out your hotel's wake up calls. At Disney, they have a pre recorded wake up call, and it's always a Disney character. Last time we were there, I think it was Big Hero 6 that woke us up. So you just like in any hotel, there's an automated system, and you just dial up and request a wake up call. And then in the morning, when the call comes in, whoever's sleeping next to the phone, just have them figured out the night before. You can just sort of roll over and hit the speaker phone button on the phone, and then everybody will hear the message. And it's always, I mean, sometimes it's Mickey Mouse telling you it's time to wake up and go to the Magic Kingdom, or Big Hero 6 has some clever thing that he says. But whatever it is, it's like that Disney moment the second that you wake up. And I'll tell you, that really helps get everybody up, because it's like, okay, this isn't just a regular hotel room we're waking in. We're waking up at Disney. And
Right. You're not just at the Marriott.
yeah. Although I wouldn't be surprised if some of those offsite hotels have cool wake-up calls too. So check it out even if you're not staying on property. I recommend getting the character wake-up call. It's very cool.
You just gave me a thought, and that is, we have kids that are between 6 and 12. If this was something we were going to do on a trip, now, typically where the kids sleep is not next to the phone, it's next to wherever the parents are sleeping. But I could see myself having the 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, instructed at the beginning of the night that when the phone rings in the morning, they're going to get a special wake-up call from a Disney character. Because I can see them getting excited just from the idea of that and saying, okay, when the phone rings, I'm not going to get it. You're going to come, because if you're like our family, we don't have a house phone. And so the kids don't answer the phone like we did when we were kids.
Yeah, you're right.
When we were kids, there was one house phone in the kitchen. It rang. Everybody in the family ran like gazelle to the kitchen to be the first person to grab it and say hello. And so our kids don't have that experience in this, in this time that we live. I mean, some people do have a home phone still, but pretty much most families just have cell phones. And so mom and dad have their phone in their pocket or their purse. So when the phone rings in the hotel, they're giving the kids the chance to answer it, to be the first one to talk to Baymax or Mickey Mouse or whoever it happens to be. I think that's a pretty cool thought. I haven't done it. So if you're out there and you want to give this a try, or it's something you've done in the past, let us know. I think that would be a really cool way to wake everybody up, because I think it would definitely get the kids up on their feet and pretty alert, actually, by the time they're done answering that call.
Yeah. I mean, Usually a wake-up call is the last way I want to wake up, waking up to a phone ringing like that. But putting it on, having it, you're exactly right. Like having somebody, the designated answerer who hits the speaker button, you got to make sure you put it on speaker so everybody hears it. It's just really fun. So yeah, I think that's just one of those little extra magic things that you get by staying on property there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you had put something in, you have a blog post to help your family wake up early in the morning. So if you're listening to this, go check out goinform.net and find that article. We'll post it in the show notes for this episode. But you have one on there about ordering room service. Tell me about that.
Yeah, speaking of your morning coffee, if you're staying in a hotel that has room service, specifically breakfast service that you can order the night before, I really recommend taking advantage of this for several reasons. The first reason is that it will guarantee that you're going to be awake because what you do is the night before you order your room service and they'll ask you what time you want it delivered. And, you've already done your math. You figured out what time you're going to get up. So let's just say you're getting up at 6. They will usually give you a window of time that they'll deliver, and then it'll be like between 6:15 and 6:30. So once you have arranged that to happen in the morning, I don't think you're going to sleep in.
No.
Because the room service guy is going to come and tap on your door at as early as 6:15. And you've got to get yourself out of bed. You can't just linger in bed. You got to put some clothes on and be ready for the room service. So that's the first reason to do it. And the second reason is that the room service coffee is so much better than the little hotel room coffee pot that you're going to have. And for room service, you don't have to order, a 6-course breakfast. What we usually do is we just order a continental breakfast, and it comes with coffee. It comes with, a basket of little pastries, and I don't know, sometimes you get some juice or something like that with it. And the coffee is a whole pot of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing, like I have that in the post you were just talking about, is a picture of the breakfast we got at Animal Kingdom Lodge, and I think it cost $12 or something. And we had 3 people on that trip, and that little basket of pastries and that pot of coffee, that was plenty for us in the morning. And then we didn't have to make coffee, and we didn't have to stop for coffee anywhere either. In fact, we just brought some Ziploc bags, and we didn't eat all the pastries then. We just put them in the Ziplocs and ate them when we were at the park. So for less than $20, which for 3 of us, if we went to a quick service and ordered that stuff, wouldn't cost any more than that.
Yeah, it's $60.
Yeah, exactly. It's like actually a really good deal.
It's an incredible value.
Yeah, you can have your coffee. It's really good, fresh coffee. You can have it while you're getting ready, so you're saving time there. And all the rooms have, to-go cups that you can pour some coffee in and take it with you. So it's a really great way to save time and motivate yourself to get up early and have a decent kind of something in your stomach first thing in the morning.
If you're going to buy breakfast on property anywhere, it's going to be expensive, but the ability to have somebody bring you freshly brewed coffee so you don't have to get out of bed and make it. They're going to knock on your door, so you can at least, if you wake up even before they get there, you can kind of lounge and lay there and relax until they actually do knock on the door. And then once they do, that's your moment to get up, get a little bit of food in your belly, get some coffee and some caffeine, get your clothes on and get out the door. It's such a great thing. I think that's such a wonderful tip. I'm definitely going to take advantage of that. And again, the value is you just can't ignore the fact that, you don't need to order this entree for every single person in your room either. You just need to order a couple of, pastries, and they come fresh and ready to go. And if you don't even eat them all, you can bag them up, like you said, and take them. I think that's great.
Yeah. And, I'm sure you could just order a pot of coffee. I mean, just tip the guy. They'll deliver you a pot of coffee at 6:30 in the morning. And that is one of the advantages if you're staying in one of the hotels, at the level that's going to have room service.
Speaking of awesome tips, here's one I never even considered that you have in your blog post, and you travel with a wake-up light. So tell me what that is like. I understand you even use one at home. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
So tell me about the wake up light. Tell me about traveling with one for first, and the kind of experience you have with something that wakes you up with brightening up the light in the room.
Okay, so a wake up light is it's a light that's got a clock in it, and you set the clock to turn the light on at a certain time. And depending on the type of wake up light that you have, it will either just turn on full blast at the time you set it, or it will slowly turn on like kind of like a sunrise. And so I have a wake up light that we travel with that it's a pretty simple thing that can really make those dark hotel rooms so much easier in the morning. Because for me, okay, it might sound like morning is my time of day, but it really isn't. And having to wake up in a really dark hotel room is so hard. And also, we live on the West Coast, so when we go to Orlando, it is a big problem getting up in the morning. I mean, if you're talking about 6 o'clock in the morning Orlando time, let's not even talk about what time that is.
That's very,
Where we
very,
came
very,
from.
very early
Yeah.
on the West Coast.
So wake up light is a way to trick your body into thinking it's morning, even if it wouldn't have thought that without it. So it's a really good hack for any kind of travel. The wake up light I have, it's like a little maybe 6 by 6 square lamp, and you just plug it in and you say what time you want to get up, and then it will just like an alarm clock, it will turn on at the time. And the one that we use, this particular light, it's really bright, so you really can have it once it turns on, the room is going to get light and you're going to wake up because there's someone just turned the light on. So it's a really good way to kind of what I'll do usually is I'll have the light come on just a few minutes before I know that wake up call is going to happen, so that we're at least slightly awake when the phone rings. And it just sort of layers in. You can see there's all these layers of things that we do to make sure we're actually up and out of bed. And this is another added layer to that. And then when you're waking up too, it's not pitch black in the room. You can see where the phone is when it rings. And it
Good
just
point.
makes it so much easier to get up. So that's a technological hack that I highly recommend.
All right, I got one more for the night before, and that is to check the park schedule the day before you go. And then you have a specific story about this. Why don't you tell us what happened to you?
When we went on this trip that had the 7 o'clock extra magic hours, we just had looked at the schedule a few weeks before and figured it was going to be 8 o'clock because that's what it said, 8 o'clock extra magic hours. And just happened to think, oh, I'm going to look at the park hours. And the park we were planning to go to the first morning was the Animal Kingdom, and we were staying way over by Magic Kingdom. So that's a long bus ride. It just means you have to get up even a little earlier. And good thing I checked it because they had changed the extra magic hours to 7 a.m. And that was super early. That was kind of crazy, actually. But we did it.
It's a good thing you checked. Otherwise, you'd be showing up at 8 a.m. and you'd
Oh,
be
I
an hour
know.
behind. You'd be there when the regular park guests are getting in.
Yeah. So everybody take a look at the park schedule, even if you think you know it by heart. Make sure they haven't changed anything. And
Yeah.
another thing too, just about that, if you see the extra magic hours go to a time like 7 a.m., you need to know that is going to be a super, super busy day in the parks, because they aren't going to open the park that early unless they're expecting a lot of crowds. And that's just one more reason why you really, really do need to get up and get out there before everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's pivot to talking about the morning of. You wake up, you got cobwebs. What are some things that you need to do first thing once your light starts to light up the room and you get your character phone call and room services knocked on the door? What are some things that need to be going through your brain?
Well, the idea here is to make sure you don't have to do too much when you first wake up. So the more, again, the more you've done the night before, the easier it's going to be. But some of the things that you're going to want to know for the morning is, again, you're going to want to know where the bus stop is. You don't want to be figuring it out in the morning. So make sure that you have kind of checked that out. And a lot of times it's going to be dark when you get there. And also there's going to be nobody else out. I'll tell you that right now. It's the beauty and the curse of it, because there's nobody to follow to the bus stop. So be aware of where you're going to be going. Obviously, already know which park you're going to. It sounds obvious, but I know that there's a lot of people who just think they'll wake up and wing it. And, no, that's, you don't want to be deciding that right then. So know where you're going, know where the bus stop is. If you haven't made coffee in a room or done room service, I recommend leaving the room like 10 minutes earlier so you can swing through whatever's at your hotel, where you can just get a cup of coffee or something to eat, a little bagel or something. So really just knowing where all these things are on the first morning is going to help you a lot. Once you've done this once, the second morning will be a lot easier, because you're already going to know, where to go to get on the bus, or where your car's parked, or whatever it is. So a lot of this kind of planning and stuff has mostly to do with that first day, but it's just so much easier if you have a plan and you have that kind of map in your head of where you're going to go.
If you ever listen to Kurt Stone over at the Geekin' on WDW podcast, he does a lot of in-park audio, and one of the things that he does frequently when he's down there at Walt Disney World is he will put on his binaural headphones and walk around at 6 a.m. on his trip to get his coffee. He kind of recounts the day before and talks about it, and what's really fun is listening to him. He just sort of, is in awe of how few people are out and about at the time of the day, and you hear him go and order his coffee and everything. But it's fun to listen to him kind of walk around the property and be like, "Wow, I'm here, and there's just nobody here. I'm all alone." And that's, again, you don't even have to go to the parks and be alone to have these magical experiences. If you can get up early. Now, Kurt lives on the East Coast, so it's a little easier for him to even get up and get out of the room and go down to the local coffee shop there at the resort to get his cup of coffee in the morning, and then head back to the room and get ready to go to the parks. And so if that's something that you're into, know where the coffee shop is at, and also kind of take the time to really revel in the fact that there's just nobody around, and you can have this quiet, peaceful moment before you dive into the chaos that is a Walt Disney World theme park. Now, there is something else that is so critical to know and to have. And so maybe putting a Post-it note on the door, or having an alarm on your phone to remind you to remember to grab your magic bands or your tickets before you leave the room, because I've heard so many stories of people who get halfway to their early morning ADR, or they're racing to get to early magic hours, and their 6-year-old left the magic band back in the hotel room, and they've got to turn around and go back and get that, and they miss out on that magical opportunity to be there super early and to be one of the first people in the park. Has that ever happened to you, Maven?
That has not happened to us, thank goodness. But I think the first time we went when there were magic bands, we probably just didn't take them off. We were so worried about losing them, or leaving them in the room or whatever. But yeah, make sure that everybody has their magic bands. That's probably the number one thing. You can always buy sunscreen. You can use your magic band to buy your lunch. But if you don't have your magic band and your phone, charge your phone too.
Definitely. Oh yeah.
If you have those two things, you're probably going to be okay. So just make sure that the kids aren't sticking them in a drawer or someplace. Have the magic bands out, and then maybe do a check before you close the room door that everybody has theirs.
Yeah, or maybe all the kids, once they get to the resort, have to hand their magic band to mom or dad. I've seen that before, where parents have, all the family's magic bands on one wrist, and then when they get ready to go to the parks, they hand them off to the kids systematically. Another thing we talked about is, if you're using a paper ticket, if you're staying off property, taking pictures of the backside of your ticket, but also knowing that if you've got your magic band linked with the My Disney Experience app, and it's pretty unlikely you're going to not have your phone with you, if you do get to the park and you don't have your magic band with you, you should be able to go to guest services and be able to still get some way to access the park. So if you're halfway there and you're thinking you can't get in without your magic band, you might want to give it a try. If you know you're going to miss your ADR, anyway. If you go back to the resort, try to continue to go on to the park anyway and see if guest services can help you get in and still make that reservation. But if you have extra magic hours, same thing. If you want to make sure that you're not going to miss out on those early morning magic hours, then continue on to the park and see if guest services can use the app on your phone to help you get into the park even without your magic band. It's worth trying. I've heard it's worked, so it's worth checking out. All right, so we got a couple of things that I want to go over that you refer to as curses and blessings on one of your blog posts about extra magic hours. And so why don't we start off with the curses? And what is one of the curses of the extra magic hours?
There's one giant curse, which is you have to get up early. And if you live on the West Coast and you just flew in the night before, it can be pretty brutal. So that's the trade-off. The trade-off is, am I going to drag myself out of bed for this? Is it worth doing that? And, I'm not going to get a lot of sleep because I'm going to be getting up so early this first morning. That's, in my mind, that's the curse.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I used to live in California. I used to work at Disneyland, and my job had me working overnight. I learned at an early age to adjust to the fact that, it's okay to get up early. And there are some people that work their whole lives going to a 9-to-5 job and seldom, if ever, have to get up at 4 a.m, maybe to take a friend to the airport or something. And so, it can be difficult for some people. For me, it's not that difficult because I trained myself to say, it's okay, I can get up anytime. If I can stay up all night working at Disneyland, and I've had many, many experiences where I would be on the dock at the submarine lagoon and watch the sunrise and watch it hit the tip of the Matterhorn and slowly creep down the Matterhorn very early in the morning, and there's nobody around, and the area music is even turned off, and it's just silent and blissful. It's wonderful. So I have firsthand experience of just how great early mornings are. So if you're one of these folks that, if you're on the West Coast and you're flying out to Orlando and you're thinking, I just don't want to get up at 3 a.m, my local time, and go experience this in a Disney World park, then I just can't stress enough how you should just try it once. Just try it once. I think it'll change your life. But I do have another thing I want to talk about when it comes to curses, and that is the last 2 times my family has gone to Walt Disney World. It's been in March during spring break, and both times our first day at the park was the day that daylight savings time began, and we lost that hour.
No.
That was not something that we knew it was coming. We knew that the calendar was, it was on the calendar for the hour to change. So we probably planned for it, but it still did not help us to adjust. But we were at least mentally prepared for it. So we made preparations for that by getting to bed a little bit earlier the night before.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. So you have some blessings as well as some curses. Well, why don't you tell us what some of those are when it comes to going to some extra magic hours in early mornings?
Yeah, I think the blessings really outweigh the curse. Otherwise, I would not be talking to you about this. The blessings are kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the show. It's just nothing like being first in the park. It's just easier when it's not a huge crowd. You don't have big lines to get into the park at security. You just walk right up. The security guards are looking for someone to say hello to. You don't have to wait in a big crowd for the bus. There's usually the bus isn't even full, usually, if you're on one of those early buses. So both of those things are just so much easier than later on in the morning. And then, oh my gosh, you get the whole park to yourself. So you can just ride at will, and it is awesome.
Yeah, we're going to talk in a few minutes about how you can not only ride what you want, but you can ride it multiple times. So if you've always had that dream in your heart of riding a ride several times in a row, this is a great way to do that. So let's go over to talk about what you did when you arrived at a Walt Disney World park for a 7 a.m. early morning at extra magic hours on a day that touring plans had it scheduled as a 10 out of 10. Now they have a system in place where they use historical data as well as maybe some other outside resources to assess and predict the crowd levels at a particular park, and they use a scale of 1 to 10. 1 meaning the crowd is practically empty, and a 10 meaning that just about every ride has an hour wait, and even the more popular ones are 2+ hour waits, and the park is at full capacity. So you went on a day that was 10 out of 10. Tell me what your experience was like taking advantage of these early morning extra magic hours.
He actually had 2 different mornings with 7 a.m. mornings, and again, 10 out of 10 days. So those are the busiest days of the year. And here's what we did. We, on the first day, we went to Animal Kingdom, and we didn't have any fast passes. We just rode standby on the rides. We got in probably about 6:45. We rode Expedition Everest 5 times in a row.
Wow.
We saw the sunrise from the ride, which is just awesome. We rode it so many times that that's a ride, by the way, where the camera, to get your picture on the ride is in a really obvious spot, and you can kind of get ready for it. We ran out of crazy faces to make. We went so many times. So, okay, so that is not all that we did. We rode Expedition Everest 5 times. Then we went over to Kilimanjaro Safari and rode that 1 time. And just that ride takes 15 or 20 minutes.
20 minutes at least,
right?
Yeah, just to ride it.
Yeah, so we rode that. Then we went to Dinosaur,
which was on the other side of the park.
Yes, and usually it's like 45 minutes to get on that thing. We rode that. Then we went on the Primeval Whirl ride, which is right by Dinosaur. We went on that twice. Then we went and saw the Tough to Be a Bug show, and mostly because we had already ridden everything. Okay, this is before Pandora opened up, so obviously there's more rides now. And then we went and had lunch at Harambe Market, and it was, guess what time it was?
How early was it? Was it really early?
Yeah, it was 11 o'clock in the morning. So we had done all those rides, and then we were like, well, might as well have lunch now. So we went over to Harambe Market and got some lunch, and there was no line because it was only 11 o'clock in the morning.
So not only did you do 10 things before 11 a.m., you pretty much did all the things you wanted to do. You saw a show. You rode Everest 5 times. You crisscrossed the park 3 times, which is amazing because it's not a small park. It's a lot of walking from Everest to the safari back to Dinosaur Land. So yeah, it's or even Dinosaur the Ride. That's that's a lot of walking around, and then going from Tough to Be a Bug over to Harambe Market and having lunch when nobody's there. And one of the most popular hacks that people say is eat lunch early or eat lunch late. And so you were able to go there and eat when everybody else was trying to get on an attraction that you've already been on. Yeah. And you're eating lunch, and then later on they're going to go get in lines to eat lunch and struggle to find a table, and you've already taken care of that and left the park probably for the day.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And it's especially satisfying when I post a picture on Facebook of us having lunch at 11 in the morning, and we've already done 10 rides, and my friends are just waking up at home because it's 8 in the morning there.
That's awesome.
I feel like, that Army commercial, we do more before 9 a.m. than most people do all day. That's us.
You guys were soldiering through.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then the next day you did Hollywood Studios. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Hollywood Studios does have a fewer rides now, but still, like, that park is always tricky for fast passes because there's a tiered fast pass system, and there just aren't that many rides there. So that's a park we always try to get to at Rope Drop. And so we did that one. Same thing, 7 a.m. extra magic hours. So here's what we did there. We went on Toy Story Midway Mania twice. Then we went to the Rock and Roller Coaster and rode it 3 times in a row.
Wow.
Now that one, we had made some fast pass reservations at Hollywood Studio for that morning. So we rode it twice on standby, and then there was starting to get to be sort of a line, but we had a fast pass. So that's how we rode the 3rd time. And after that, we walked over to Star Tours, and I have a picture of that Star Tours queue on my post here, and it is just dead, like totally empty. And that must have been, by then, I'm going to guess like maybe 9:30 in the morning or something. So anyway, we rode that once. And then we walked over to Tower of Terror and rode that twice. We used standby once, and then we used our fast pass. And then we went to Epcot for lunch in France. And the time that we left the park of Hollywood Studios, let's see, what had we done? Twice Toy Story Mania, 3 times Rock and Roller Coaster, Star Tours, and twice on Tower of Terror. We went, my notes here say,
yeah,
10:30 in the morning we were done.
Wow. Wow.
That's the beauty of those super early extra magic hours. Really, it's not going to be that much different if you start at 8 a.m. People are not interested in getting up that early. You know, it's when they're on vacation. And if you can be the people who get there first, those couple of hours at the beginning of the day, you can just knock it out. And it's awesome.
Yeah, we're always a big fan of rope dropping. We try to do that every day that we're there. And we try to put a buffer day in between so that we can have some time to sleep in and some pool time and actually enjoy our trip. But the last couple times we've gone, we did not stay on property. So as off property people, we don't have the advantage of using extra magic hours. So we try to avoid the parks that actually have extra magic hours. So just kind of as a slight tangent, we'll get back to extra magic hours in a minute, but we each have some stories and some tips on if you're staying off property, you can actually, this is an extra magic hours hack in that you're going to identify the park that has it and then avoid it and try to find one of the other 3 parks that has the least amount of crowd level that day and take advantage of what you can do in the mornings there. I know you have a really good one when it comes to fast pass reservations in combination with how you use extra magic hours. Why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, our typical plan is to use our Fast Pass Plus reservations for afternoon and use extra magic hours to ride in the morning. So what we typically do is we will go to a park, like in my first example there with Animal Kingdom. We'll head over there with no fast passes and ride as much as we want because there's no crowd. You don't need a fast pass usually. If you're in the park in the first couple of hours anyway, you can just ride standby with minimal wait. So you can save your fast pass reservations for later in the day. And it's really is true that the parks that have morning extra magic hours will get more crowded during the day than the ones that don't. But the crowds don't really start showing up. It's kind of weird. It seems like they should all be there for extra magic hours if that's making the park busy. But for whatever reason, it really doesn't get to the peak crowds until later in the morning or around lunchtime. We'll do our riding at the parks and our sightseeing when the parks level is low in the morning. And then usually around lunchtime, we'll just hop over to a second park, one of the parks, probably the same park you would already be in, because we also like that touring plan crowd calendar. And we'll look at that and see which park they expect to be less crowded that afternoon. And that's the park where we'll have our fast pass reservations and we'll just tour at a more leisurely pace over there for the afternoon. So yeah, I recommend making your fast pass reservations during the busiest time of the day so that you know you can get on a ride without waiting in those long lines in the afternoons.
Yeah, we do the same thing. I definitely don't make reservations with FastPass until at the earliest, maybe 11 a.m. Let me tell you a little story about what we did when we went to Magic Kingdom on our last trip. And we had our first FastPass was at noon for Space Mountain. And like a lot of people tend to go right into Tomorrowland or right into Fantasyland, or some of my friends are smart. They go left, when they go into Magic Kingdom and they try to be first on Pirates and go hit Splash and Big Thunder because the crowds tend to go the other direction. We got to Magic Kingdom for rope drop. We went, half of my family went straight to the castle show, and I went with another family member to guest services right away so we could take care of some issues we had with our park tickets and got that resolved. We met up with our family right after the castle show, right at the entrance to Peter Pan, and we did Peter Pan, It's a Small World, Enchanted Tales with Belle, The Little Mermaid. We made our way over to Winnie the Pooh, but it broke down right as we
Oh.
were about to board the ride. So we got an extra fast pass actually
Cool.
because of that. I had it on my plan that if the line for the Speedway was about 15 minutes or less, then we would do that. And it was around 10 minutes. So we did that.
Mm-hmm.
We used our fast pass for Buzz Lightyear. Then we checked out Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor. We did the Carousel Progress. Some of our family members did the Astro Orbiter, while some others went and got in line for Space Mountain for our fast pass. So we pretty much knocked out, 80-90% of what's on the east side of the park there between Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. And we were super early to our fast pass for Space Mountain. And I think the park was a 7 out of 10 that day. But just getting there early and taking advantage of that and knowing that there was extra magic hours over at Epcot that day really gave us the advantage of being able to get into Magic Kingdom, which is the busiest park, and take advantage of a lot of those attractions early. And of course, we ended up taking a break and coming back to the park later that day to do Seven Dwarfs and then the rest of the west side of the park. And we saw everything that day. We ended up going back to Magic Kingdom 2 more times on that trip, but we had pretty much done everything that we'd wanted to do on that first day because we took advantage of so much in the early morning hours.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, another one that's really great first thing in the morning is Haunted Mansion. There's like nobody goes to that one first, and you can ride that as many times as you want. So anybody who's a Haunted Mansion fan, which obviously we are because I know about this, it's really fun to just be able to kind of go on it several times in a row and look for all the hidden Mickeys and all the cool stuff. So yeah, that's fun.
We had talked about in our previous episode how you can get some great photos if you get an early morning ADR and get into the park before anybody else. But another great way to do that, and we talked about this earlier on this episode, is taking pictures if you have these extra magic hours. Do you have any memories or stories from any great photo ops that you had while you were walking through the park early in the morning?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a picture of my daughter in front of the castle with literally no one behind her. I mean, it's so amazing. But really, the best place for those early pictures is Animal Kingdom. Oh my gosh, it's just gorgeous. I mean, the whole park is so lush, and then to have the light coming through at sunrise it's awesome. So yeah, and again, you can see some of those pictures on my post there and I share them on Instagram too because I just think they're so beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we admit that some of you just may not be able to do this, but if you can, you'll never want to wait in a line ever again. You'll always be dedicated to getting up early and dragging your friends and family to the parks early in the morning. Maven, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your tips and your hacks. I love your blog. You've got tons of great resources there. Why don't you take a moment to tell folks about it and how they can find out about you and maybe some other tips that they can find before they go to Walt Disney World?
Yeah, well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. It's always really fun to talk about this stuff. Yeah, over at goinformed.net, I've got lots of tips to help you have a better trip to Orlando and actually some other fun places too. One of my newer posts is 55 things to know before you go to Disney World. And I highly recommend taking a look at that, even if you are just thinking about, in fact, it's almost better if you haven't really made your plan yet. Start thinking about all the different things that go into a trip, and it'll also get you excited for going to Disney World. So yeah, that's goinformed.net.
Awesome. And they can find you on Instagram, Facebook, all the usual places.
Yep. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest, and it's goinformed.net at all of those places.
Awesome. All right. Well, I just want to take a minute to remind folks to check out the Disney Hack. You can go find us at thedisneyhack.com or on social media everywhere at The Disney Hack. Feel free to leave me a review on iTunes if you feel so inclined. I got some new ones that I'll probably be reading in a future episode. I'm super excited about the feedback that I'm getting. People are really liking this, and I love that because it takes a lot of effort to put these things together, and we definitely do it out of the love of our heart. There's not much more that we're getting out of it other than, just the passion that we have for going on these trips and then the ideas that we have that we want to share. And that's why Maven has her blog. That's why I do the podcast. And so if you can, please write a review. Give me your feedback. I would really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed yet, you can check me out on all the usual podcasting platforms where you're going to find future episodes for all your tricks and tips for your future Disney trips. And that's it. That's all we've got to say. Until next time, make sure to set your light to wake you up in the morning. Thanks, Maven, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.